March or even May, because that's the season where people get slightly depressed. Maybe not even the SAD time, but we are getting there. So one of the conditions is now fulfilled. We have high cortisol levels in the experimental room, but we also need the low melatonin levels. And we got that as well. So you see in the experimental room, the melatonin level are lower. And that, together these two creates that the pupils are awake and alert and more eager to learn. That's sort of the conclusion on that. And if you talk about the moods, which could be interesting because we have a daylight theme in over this presentation as well. In general, if you compare the moods with the students from the first floor to the ground floor, people are generally in a better mood when you have a higher daylight factor. And I think most of us instinctively know that if we have large windows, much daylight, people are in a better mood in general. So we should never talk about artificial lighting fighting daylighting. It's always supplementing. So in future buildings, let's have a lot of windows, a lot of daylight coming in, and then let's supplement with some good lighting that helps people perform when the sun goes away. So this is the comparison of moods in the ground floor, where you see it's the same during October, December, probably longing for Christmas. So the mood is pretty much the same. And as soon as you move to January, February, March, the experimental room, the mood rises, and it has a dip in the control room. So the lighting shows us that the mood, subjectively measured with the students, is actually better in the experimental rooms. And this is what it all boils down to, because that's what the headmaster and the teachers ask for. Can we prove valid data, statistically proven, that we have better results in math during the dark season on the ground floor in the experimental room? Yes, we can prove that now. We have 1 grade higher with the students who have decent lighting. And if we take the entire school year, the difference is not that big, but it's almost 1 grade higher. So this is really what schools are requesting. Can we make lighting systems for our school that ensures us to get the maximum learning or the maximum, the best start for the pupils attaining to the school? Math is one thing, reading class is another. There's a tendency, it's the same, especially in the dark season. They get higher grades in reading. If you take the entire school year, we are around half a grade. But still, it's statistic valid, and it's proven data that you get better rates in reading as well. So this study over 1 year has proved that if you do good lighting design based on scientific facts, you can actually help the students get higher grades. What we're waiting for now is somebody to reproduce it, because that's sort of basic on every scientific finding, that you do something, you publish it, and then you hope that somebody else will be able to reproduce it. And we have started a study in the southern parts of Sweden where we are going to reproduce it. This was done in London. Now we are going to do a study in Sweden, and we are going to use LED fixtures as a supplement to see if LED also can provide these kind of things. I guess most of you have been thinking, or at least the engineers among you, yeah, that's very nice, but we also have an energy directive, at least in the rest of the world. Maybe you have lots of energy up here, but the rest of us is at least fighting to keep the energy use down. And we see a dramatic raise in energy in the dark time of the years in the experimental rooms, because we boost the light so much as we do. So we cannot do this without using a lot of energy. So we are facing this fact and see we are standing in this diversion where the roads are. Do we want to go down one road where we do lighting for the students, lighting for people, or do we want to take the other road where we save the world, reduce carbon dioxide and carbon footprint, and make a decent place to live on the longer terms? And I think a lot of us who do this on a daily basis are actually fighting, running a little bit on both sides, because we want to save the world, but we also want to make good lighting for people. And this is really a challenge that we are facing over the next decade, I think, and we will have to do that together. And the only way that we can make these ends meet is really professional use of advanced control systems. Because we know we can achieve the results, we can make really good lighting for people, but we also need to calculate every time we make a light plan to use advanced control systems. Otherwise, we cannot look people in the eye and say we are saving a lot of energy. But it is almost possible. And if the test that we are making now with LEDs helps us to save that little bit of energy so that we can tell people we are not using more energy, we're just providing better lighting solutions, then we are a big step ahead. So now I feel like we have covered lighting around people, lighting people's skin, and also giving people the biological light they need to succeed and to perform. That was quite a talk. So I have a little extra for you because you have been so nice and patient, and only a few people have left. So it's really nice that you're back here. I'm giving lectures at the university in Wismar also, and a professor down there who runs the lighting design class, his name is Michael Rody, and he always gives a speech which he's really good at. And I asked him, because I was going up here, if I were allowed to use a few of his slides, and I would like to share with you something which is a little more woo-woo, sort of like spiritual based. But I think you can handle it. Are you up to that? It'll take us 10 minutes more than we're there. Thank you. So something happened back in 1975. And this Dr. Fritz Albert Popp from Kaiserslautern, he found out that our cells inside our body are emanating light. So we are actually not translucent beings, but we are illuminating. We are sort of like being who emit lights. It is defined as biophotopic radiation. And in every cell in our body, we have a small amount of light generated. And our body being 70% of water, the light flows from one cell to another one. We know now that the light is modulated. It's like pulsing, but we don't know if this light between the cells transmits any data. We know if it does, it will transmit data with the speed of light, so we could sense this feeling going through our body, probably parallel to our nervous system. But we don't really know what it's for, and that's, of course, is the interesting part, because it gives people a lot of speculation. What does this light really do? And how does it work? First of all, it's as I said, the organism emits light, and our body emits light in the visual spectrum from 450 to 650 nanometers. There's a Japanese scientist, Dr. Kobayashi, who wants to use this as a diagnostic tool where you strip people down, stand them like this, and then take a picture with a camera, and then doing a diagnosis system depending on how much light comes out of different parts of your body. And this is a picture. It's visible light. It's not any infrared or thermal photography or anything. But this is a picture where if you hit the finger like that, and then you get a photography of it, counting photons, the part of the index finger is radiating more light than the rest of the hand. So it can somehow be influenced by physical treatment, but the basic thing is that it's recordable. You take a very highly sensitive camera, you put a person into a black chamber, and you take a picture, and then you see which parts of the body radiates light. This was also actually based on some research done back in 1929 in Russia, where some scientists put two plants next to each other in glass pots. And if you watered the one and you treated it very well and sang a little song to it, and it was thriving and having a good time, then the plant next to it also had a good time. And the theory was that some optical information was transmitted from the roots of one of the plants and received by the roots in the other plant. And if you took a flamethrower or burned the leaves of one of them, the other would also suffer. And Fritz Albert Popp took that into his consideration and said, maybe this kind of illumination that comes out of our body transmits information about health and about our well-being. So you remember that I showed you a little while ago the sensitivity curve and the biological curve. And the funny thing is that these were the artificial light sources, but the light that comes out of our body is within this square. So it's both visual, but also heavily biological. So it may have a biological influence. And this is when we start to talk about, is this really a way of measuring aura, Or is this a way of explaining